Start with breaking news in the Middle East right now. Live look at Beirut, Lebanon. The U.S.-Iran ceasefire is facing a major test tonight. Central Command forces say they are hitting back at Iran for violating the ceasefire. They say these are not proportional responses. They say this is punishment for attacking tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. And the U.S. response does not stop there. They also are going after the Iranians where it really hurts. They are revoking a waiver that allowed Iran to sell oil. This is a major moment for President Trump to teach the Iranians a lesson, which brings us to our Why It Matters segment tonight. With both Iran and Russia, President Trump literally tonight is facing a legacy-defining moment. With Iran, that disproportionate response, hopefully that the world sees with some video from the U.S. strikes, we will no longer be played as suckers by the mullah's fourth stringers. With Russia, Donald Trump could be the president to finally get the best of Vladimir Putin. We will hear that and know that in the next 24 hours. No American president has been to a NATO summit with the Russian president on the ropes. See, President Trump just arrived in Turkey. He's had a day of meetings so far. And if you think about this, Putin got the best of Bush, got the best of Obama, got the best of Biden. And right now, things for Mr. Putin are looking pretty bad. The war with Ukraine is a disaster. Russians are fighting over gas. So Trump has a choice over the next 24 hours. He can either keep following his instincts and trash NATO, which helps Vladimir Putin, or he can be unpredictable and reinforce NATO. That would isolate Putin. So far, Putin is smiling.
I was very disappointed with NATO. And frankly, if it weren't held in Turkey, where my friend happens to be a very strong leader, a very strong person, it's possible that I wouldn't have attended.
Trump has an impressive list of grievances with NATO over the war with Iran and many other grievances. He isn't wrong about any of them. This just isn't the time. As we've told you for more than a month, Putin, he's an old KGB man. He would love nothing more than to flip the script and go on the attack. Attack NATO, divide NATO. The Wall Street Journal headlines, Putin may see an opportunity to destroy NATO. Newsweek writes, Russian drone makers preparing for a great war with NATO. Trump should deal with NATO later, and it needs a good talking to. The time to deal, the opportunity to deal with Vladimir Putin is right now. Bring in Bill O'Reilly, anchor of the No Spin News, author of Confronting Evil, host of the We Will Do It Live podcast, of which I was an honored guest. Bill, good to see you. Is this the time to be strong with bad Vlad or the time to offer him a way out?
Well, I don't know that there is a way out for Putin at this point because he's done so many horrendous things that they're just not going to let him walk away. And Putin's never going to surrender. He's like the mullahs in that regard. He'll take his own people down. He doesn't care about them, the Russian people. And as you pointed out, they're fighting amongst themselves now, the Russians. And the casualties are horrendous. For what? It's never been really defined what this is all about on Putin's end. So I think Trump is basically going to stand on the sideline and watch Putin go down. I don't think he's going to get involved directly with that. Iran's another story. So Mr. Trump has had enough. Had enough. And he gave them more than enough time to be reasonable. We were generous to Iran in our trade deals with them and allowing them to recoup some of the money. And they attacked 3 ships. Enough.
So you see this as a watershed moment?
I don't know about watershed. I don't know what that means, but he's fed up. And that dovetails right back into NATO. He's fed up with NATO. But here, it's a little bit different because he got what he wanted. It was painful, but NATO is now putting in a lot of money to their defense, and this hurts Putin, as you pointed out.
So you don't see
But then
criticizing
Donald
NATO as helping Putin.
Yeah, I do, but not in a existential way. It helps him symbolically. But Trump is still mad at NATO for denying U.S. aircraft refueling privileges, and he can't get by it. See, if it were me or I was the White House chief of staff, I'd say, Mr. President, take the win. Take the win. So NATO bent to your rules. They're putting in a lot more money than they were, and they're obviously not to make you mad. But then the president injects Greenland. Why?
Yeah, we have
Why
that
now?
soundbite one. Take a listen.
That's what hurt my relationship with NATO, because Greenland doesn't help Denmark. It was Greenland that, and it continues to be, that should be controlled by the United States, not by Denmark. And when they wouldn't go along with it, and with all the money we spend to help them with Russia, and we don't have to spend any money, we could remove all of our soldiers out of Europe.
Yeah, and all that does is make Vladimir Putin think, I could try to provoke something with NATO, and it might give me a negotiating leg when it comes to Ukraine. It shows him a playbook, an opportunity to divide the thing that is putting him on the ropes.
Then he's a fool. Because again, it's
Putin's
not
a fool
about
to think
NATO
that?
and Putin. It's about Putin and his own people. Okay? But I don't understand why Donald Trump had to bring up Greenland today. And just, take the win.
Yeah?
And then maybe next week do it. Okay? Because if you look at the history of the United States and NATO, the Marshall Plan and all of that, because that ties right in, we're the ones that have been
We footed the bill
benefactors,
totally.
the protectors.
Yeah.
And so he's right, Trump is, by saying, look, you lived off us for 50 years and you wouldn't let our planes land when you know how bad this terrorist state is? So I understand and sympathize with the president's frustration, but it's a chess game, and he didn't have to move his king, okay? He didn't have to move it.
Right.
He got the big one. So next week, we'll go back to Greenland. They're never going to like him over there anyway. They can't wait till he gets out of office, they being the EU and NATO. Never going to like him. But if Putin thinks that Putin's going to derive benefit from NATO not liking Trump, he's out of his blanket mind.
Okay, you wrote Confronting Evil. Putin was on the cover. We did a whole special on him. I thought your analysis of him was great. This is a former KGB guy. Russian military doctrine, the KGB doctrine, what we've always seen from Vladimir Putin is escalate to de-escalate. And you're telling me that Vladimir Putin sees Donald Trump blasting NATO, dumping on NATO, criticizing NATO. He doesn't sit there and say, you know what, I can sort of nibble around the edges here, and I will then have something to negotiate with when right now I don't.
I don't see it at all. I don't think NATO or the United
Putin doesn't
States
think Trump is a mark.
I think Putin is basically hoping, and that's not a strategy, that some cataclysmic occurrence will save him. What is saving Vladimir Putin from death is that he pays his generals and the oligarchs who run his industry billions of dollars.
And if the money runs out,
he pays them billions of dollars. Okay? That's what's saving him. Not Trump, not any of the NATO countries, none of that. Okay? As long as he can come up with the cash.
You brought up cash, which, look, if the cash runs out for the generals and the oligarchs, they get rid of Putin. A lot of Americans think cash is an issue right now. Cuomo pointed out 95% of Americans, 95% say affordability is an issue. Here's you on the No Spin News soundbite number 3.
My portfolio is doing great because Trump is, his policies appeal to the big companies. But 40% of Americans don't participate in capitalism, and a lot of them are yowling about high prices. Come on. You get 4% inflation here. Live in the real world. So you younger people, you got to get into the stock market.
That doesn't sound exactly in touch with the folks I know, Bill. Kind of sounds like what Joe Biden used to say, what Donald Trump now says is, hey, don't worry about affordability, don't worry about prices. Stock market's doing great. Eat cake.
Look, just because the stock market's doing great doesn't mean you don't worry about high insurance premiums. You can, worry about them. But my point is, ever since I was working at Scranton, Pennsylvania, as a young reporter, I put away 10% of my money. Okay? If I had to suffer, I suffered. And I put away 10%, and then I got a stockbroker, and he invested in very conservative companies, and the Standard & Poor's and all of that. And now Trump is set that on a skyrocket.
Yeah.
So if you were smart and you understood capitalism, which very few people do.
Bill, I hear
money
Bill, I
can
hear
make
you.
money.
I agree with you, okay? And for people who've invested in the market, it's done wildly well. 47% of Americans indicate they have...
Why don't we hear that?
Hold on. We hear it every day. We talk about it. Hold on. But 47% of Americans, less than half of Americans, indicate they have sufficient liquidity or access to funds to cover a $1,000 emergency expense. Flip that around. That means 53% of Americans can't cover a $1,000 emergency expense. What money are they supposed to invest in the stock market, Bill?
Well, number one, whose fault is that? Whose fault is it they don't have $1,000 if something goes wrong? Who?
So it's their fault for having a hard time?
Are they underemployed? Get it? It's not a matter of having a hard time. It's a matter of options. We live in a country where there's a tremendous amount of options. And if you're not doing well, you can do other things. I mean, Bill,
I remember Jimmy Carter was the one who told everybody to turn the temperature down. That didn't work. You don't win by telling the American people, hey, do buy with less and be happy about it.
Well, I'm not a politician, so I don't care about that. What I care about is
winning a lot of friends,
this fiction.
Okay.
That, well, I'll live with it. The fiction that there's a society that is unfair to people who don't have $1,000. That's not true. That you can make the money, but you have to sacrifice for it. Go to community college, go to night school, drive an Uber, do whatever you have to do to build up your resources. We don't hear that. All we hear is the oligarchs have all the money and you can't make it. Bull. I was going to say a bad word. It's bull. If you're smart and disciplined, you can participate in the capitalistic system. If you're stupid and lazy, you can't. There you go. Okay.
If you're stupid and lazy, it's I guess your segment, but I'm just thinking to myself in terms of how you win the hearts and minds of the American people, telling them that they're stupid and lazy if they don't have enough money. Boy, I've never heard that as a winning strategy. I've read Dale Carnegie, Bill. It's not there.
Okay. If I were running for office, okay, then I would phrase it differently. But I'm on NewsNation, and my job is to tell you the truth. That's my job.
So the truth is that if you're hurting right now, it's because you're lazy.
Not 100%, but there are a lot of younger Americans who are absolutely clueless about how to make money, how to keep money, and about the capitalistic system. Every poll shows.
Well, that's why they like the socialism.
They don't understand what capitalism is.
Well, that's why they like socialism. It's a participation trophy. Yeah, no, that's a point. It's a point about younger Americans for sure. Bill, always fun. It's good to see you. Never boring.
All right, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, appreciate you. Mitch McConnell, remember him? Senate Majority Leader? Literally disappeared from Washington. Next, how Republicans are making the same mistake Democrats did with Joe Biden.
This is a very sharp president.
He is as sharp as ever.
Intensely probing and detail-oriented and focused.
His mental acuity is great.
He seemed fine to me.
It is hard for us to keep up with this president.
Greatest hits. Democrats kept trying to assure us that President Biden was sharp as a tack. We just didn't see it. They are still paying the price, as well they should, for lying about Biden's health. Don't look now, but Republicans are making the exact same mistake. On June 14th, it was reported that 84-year-old Senator Mitch McConnell was hospitalized. Soon after, Majority Leader John Thune said McConnell was fine, put out a statement about that again today, and would return to work soon.
I spoke to him yesterday, and he was in good spirits. I mean, he was paying very dialed in, paying attention to what's going on, and indicated that he would be back soon.
3 weeks later, and soon has never come. The New York Times reports McConnell has been hospitalized for 3 weeks, and aides will not say why. One of the most powerful senators in America, the former majority leader, disappeared from public view for weeks, and no one can tell us if he's coherent. No one can tell us if he's somehow incapacitated, if he should resign. His seat would be vacant pending a special election, and Republicans do not want that. With us now, former Republican Pennsylvania Congressman Charlie Dent, senior advisor to our Republican legacy. You know, the only thing the founders didn't think of, Charlie, was term limits and age limits.
Well, yeah, there's something to be said for that. There's no shame in retiring at the age of 80. But I just want to say one thing, though. Look, we've seen this before. I served with Strom Thurmond, Bob Byrd, Thad Cochran, Dianne Feinstein, and I'm probably forgetting a few, who really struggled in later years. They had long distinguished careers, and you want to remember them at their prime, at their best, not at their worst moments health-wise. And I'm afraid that's what's happening. Certainly everybody should be more transparent about their health.
No, you could write a book of guys who don't quit when they're on top. Bill Belichick, Tom Brady come to mind. Tiger Woods comes to mind, among others. But there's a difference between being a sports figure and not leaving on top versus having an oath to execute on behalf of, in this case, the people of Kentucky. His former aide, Scott Jennings, though, says there's nothing to see. Take a listen.
He called me this morning before I did my radio show. We talked for about 17 minutes. It was good to hear his voice. Voice sounded strong and sounded like he was keeping up with the news to me.
Did you come away feeling like he's still capable of serving the people of Kentucky as senator?
I came away feeling that he was staying on top of the news.
That was a delicate non-answer by Scott Jennings. I'm sure he would not have accepted that if a guest had given him that on the radio. At what point, Charlie, does the media, and frankly, do members of his own party have a responsibility to say, we need to tell the truth?
Well, I think they need to be transparent in all these situations. Tell us what the condition is. I think we can accept it. And of course, you have the political side of this. Ordinarily, somebody might resign if they're not able to fulfill their term. And then in the case of the Senate, the governor would make an appointment, but you have a Democratic governor, so you got politics involved. In the House, we go to special elections. And so in some cases there, people do leave sooner because they can just go to the special election. They can determine the outcome in a more friendly way. But look, they need to be more transparent. There's no question about it. And we've seen distinguished public servants kind of go out on a bad note.
Charlie, though, it's interesting. I think about what Cuomo said earlier. He said 95% of Americans think there's an affordability crisis. You poll it, more than 80% of Americans want term limits, they want age limits, and they want a ban on stock trading by members of Congress. And they're never going to get it, are they?
Well, I do think for the Supreme Court, we've talked about age limits. I think it's a very good idea. And I would argue you could do the same thing for members of Congress. Maybe you set the age limit at 80. You'd have to amend the Constitution, I suspect, to do that. But I do think that would be worthwhile. And I do think that, again, that's something that voters could take up. If it ever got on the ballot, I suspect it would pass in all states.
Yeah,
I
it would.
think that's I don't think that's
it would.
outrageous.
It'll just never get on the ballot. Might for the Supreme Court, because it doesn't require Congress to live by the same rules.
Correct.
Charlie Dent with a reality check. Thank you very much. Here is something, this is something you're not going to hear anywhere else on TV. No cable news host will say it. Graham Platner should stay in the Maine Senate race. Really, Platner should stay in. I'll tell you why next.
Do you think that Graham Platner should drop out of the race?
I believe that it's time for him to drop out of the race. And I think that the only appropriate response is for the campaign to come to an end.
These are horrific allegations, and he needs to get out of the race right now.
Well, I made the statement specifically to say that he should step aside. And let me say that clearly. I think he should step aside.
Much like the lion in Wizard of Oz, Democrats have finally found their courage and told Graham Platner to drop out of Maine's Senate race. Welcome to the party. Let me tell you something you will not hear anywhere else on TV. Maybe if he's watching, he can listen. Graham Platner, you should not drop out. Democrats in Maine overwhelmingly voted for him. They knew about the Nazi tattoo. They knew about the domestic violence. They knew about the racist posts online. They, along with all of the other Democrats who endorsed him, knew about the rape fantasies online. If you fantasize about raping someone, you might have raped somebody. They all knew he was a repugnant human being. And 156,000 people still voted for him. But now that he might lose, the Democrats from around the country that defended him now want him to drop out. Why now? Well, they only have 6 days to replace him on the ballot. And the New York Times, that buried the Platner scandal before the primary election, is now all in trashing the everyman oysterman. Headline is there. To them, winning is everything. They excused the Nazi tattoo when they thought he would win. Now they've abandoned him. So much for democracy. Yemisi Egbewole, former Biden White House press office chief of staff, former assistant to President Biden, Meghan Hayes, and Michael Shepard, political editor of Bangor Daily News, is all here. Thank you all. Ladies first, as it was. You've been all over this from the very beginning, so I'm going to start with you real quick. I predict that if Platner goes dark for 2 or 3 weeks and stays in the race, come the middle of August, all these Democrats will say, well, he's better than Susan Collins, and send back all the money and the endorsements.
I don't think he'll last 2 to 3 more
Why not?
days. I mean, he can, but I just don't think that's possible. And I think, much like Yemisi, have been calling for him after the Nazi tattoo was enough.
He's a horrible human being, but the voters have spoken. Why shouldn't they get their say?
Graham Platner doesn't have the money. The DSCC has already pulled out. Senator Gillibrand's not coming back. The establishment that he criticized so much since he was anti-establishment is not going to fund him. And for these anti-establishment candidates, the hard lesson for them is that they need the folks in Washington, the folks in California, the folks at Aspen to do those pretty little meetings in those big houses and raise money for them. And no one's going to do it. And unfortunately...
So you think if he stays in, the Democrats will just write off the Senate seat?
Yeah, I mean, they've already said that, right? Like the Democratic...
They've said lots of things.
But the Senate Majority PAC and the DSCC, they're going to move money elsewhere to seats that they can win. They know that they cannot win this seat. So this is about winning back the majority or putting forth an effort for it. So they're going to go invest in Texas and Ohio and Iowa and Alaska and North Carolina, where they do see a movement for the map to win back the majority. So they're not going to waste their money on someone like Graham Platner.
Michael, I want to get you in on this from on the ground. As you talk to voters who voted for Graham Platner, does this allegation, rather than the Nazi tattoos or the rape fantasies or anything else, are you talking to people who say, oh, well, if I had known that, I wouldn't have voted for him?
I think that, look, this is a rape allegation, right? And it's a little more abstract when it's on Reddit. And it's not something you can hold, right? And I think that this has escalated, right? And I think there's a sense here that it's not just this one thing. It is the creep and this evening, right? The Washington Post reports on an ex-girlfriend who alleges that he took condoms off during sex without a consent. So this is just one thing after another. We don't even know if we're at the end yet, right? So
well, no, you're never at the end with guys like this, because there's always going to be more. But thank you for talking about the Washington Post report, I told my producers that it was going to make me blush because my mom was watching if I had to read the headline out loud. So there is that. But Yemisi, you're right about the establishment. The anti-establishment crew came after you because a couple of weeks ago and months ago, you and I had this very same conversation. You said this guy needs to go because you knew what we all knew, which is these kind of allegations were coming.
Yeah, no money that I make is affected by a Nazi being elected to Senate. And I don't even work on campaigns. What Emma was threatened by was I said that Graham Platner was cosplaying as working class, and then I listed his history. And what I find insulting, and what I have said to those people is, as somebody who grew up with 2 working class immigrant parents, I understand the working class, and they actually have more pride, and they have more values than a lot of the people that exist in that same world. And I found it demeaning to assume that an entire class of people were deserving or should feel honored that somebody as degenerate as Graham Platner wanted to represent them.
Remind me never to get on your bad side. But Chris Murphy, senator from Connecticut, he said something about it after the Nazi tattoo. He goes, he sounds like a normal guy to me. And I thought to myself, I don't have any friends who have Nazi tattoos. I would not let somebody with a Nazi tattoo date my sister or who put this on the internet. There are still Democrats, though, who are defending Graham Platner. This is soundbite number 2.
We continue to have a situation where Democrats and Republicans are playing by completely separate rule books.
I think that we are in a time of existential crisis in this country. I think Republicans fall in line. They don't fall in love. Democrats want to fall in love and not fall in line.
Sonny Hostin said she'd still vote for him.
That's, despicable. It was despicable. Again, he has a Nazi tattoo. He's lied about how he makes his income. He has lied from day one. He is not working class. Someone should rip back the polling and see that these folks do not actually have support of working class. They have support of rich, white, affluent people who are college educated. That is not working class people. But also, 2 things can be true. Democrats do want to fall in love rather than fall in line. And we do have someone in the White House
I know a lot of Republicans who fell in love with Donald Trump.
That's weird, but okay. They have so many, that he also has allegations of sexual assault against him. So 2 things can be true, but I, as a Democrat, do not want someone like Graham Platner to represent anybody in the United States Senate. I would hope that our party would have more morals and more ethics in that than to have someone as disgusting as him.
Okay, so the question now is, what happens, right? Because even though Democrats defended the guy with the Nazi tattoo and the rape fantasies and the racist posts, well, they may still come out ahead. Democrats right now are thinking it could very much work to their advantage come November because Graham Platner right now is down in the polls. They may be getting a mulligan on their most problematic candidate. This is who would be an option in the primary if Platner drops out. So this is who Democrats could pick with someone new entirely. Among those that they are considering is a man who came in 3rd place in the Democratic governor's primary, a guy named Troy Jackson. And in a poll, we don't know how reliable it is. One poll says Jackson is polling better than Platner in a hypothetical matchup against Susan Collins. And I return back to our guest in Maine. How is it that a guy who came in 3rd in the governor's primary would be polling well?
Well, you also had the person on that graphic who came in 4th, Secretary of State Shanna Bellows, and another person who came in 3rd in a congressional primary, Jordan Wood, and you have the governor who didn't even make it to Election Day, right? So you have, nobody has claim to this, right? there's
How would it even work? Do we know?
Well, we don't know, right? He has to make the decision to leave on his own volition by Monday. After that, there's a 2-week clock. The party gets to figure out how they are going to do this. Now, we are hearing a little bit from them today that the party's executive director just put out a pretty remarkable video in which she essentially says that Graham Platner's team is holding the party hostage a little bit. It's my editorialization there, but she says that they're trying to exert their influence.
You couldn't imagine a guy accused of rape who has a Nazi tattoo of holding anybody hostage. Just be unthinkable for him to act in that way. Don't worry, you don't have to respond to that. But Troy Jackson, 58% betting odds right now. what does he bring to the table other than he's kind of generic Democrat, and so the race turns into a referendum on Susan Collins?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, he has a long history in Maine politics. He's been in and around the legislature for the better part of the century, right? He first ran as a Republican. We got in as an independent, became a Democrat. He's from a very socially conservative area of northern Maine. And he won there. He won a district that's gone from, kind of blue blood, classic Franco-American Democrat to hard Trump district now, right? So he won elections up there. He won elections up there up until 2022. He also lost a selectman race in his own hometown. So, I don't know, maybe that washes some of it out a little bit. But the electoral case, he's been someone who's been on the radar for high office for a long time, and has run for Congress once and ran for governor once.
But only came in third.
Right.
So let me just ask you this: as you're looking at this, is this essentially for Democrats? Hey, we can create a referendum on Susan Collins, generic Democrat. Maine was a Kamala Harris plus 7 or 8 state, therefore generic Democrat wins.
I think that's always right. What a race against Susan Collins looks like, right? The theory with Democrats is that, hey, we just got to win our own voters, right? It's damn hard to do against someone like Susan Collins because she has even the ability to get 1 in 10 Biden voters, right? In 2020 is just an electoral superpower. I mean, nobody else can do that essentially across the country. Yeah. So you have to keep that in mind. And Democrats here are looking for an edge, right? And I think that Troy Jackson offers them at least something in terms of that northern Maine match that they've been lacking.
And Jackson also helps the rest of the country for Democrats because they no longer have to answer for Graham Platner. The other person they may have to answer for is Abdul al-Sayed in Michigan. He's about as close to a Hezbollah terrorist as you can get without getting arrested for material support. Likely to be the Democratic Senate nominee. Here's him at the debate tonight. Take a listen.
ICE is about normalizing paramilitary force on our streets. I've been clear that you can't reform ICE. You can't retrain ICE. You have to abolish ICE. Now, that's not to say that we can't secure our border. That's not even to say that we can't actually enforce our immigration policy. That is to say that we shouldn't do it at the edge of destroying our Constitution itself.
Yemisi, forgive me for being a little annoyed at getting lectured on the Constitution by Abdul al-Sayed, but he also said you got to defund the police. This is a tried and true radical by any estimation. Is he the same as Graham Platner?
I think he's different than Graham Platner in maybe what they believe about race.
Okay.
And I don't know his personal relationships with women. But I do think a lot of their policies, I think if you put a lot of their speeches together, it's probably a Yahtzee board of buzzwords like corporate interests, billionaires, oligarchies. I think they use the same lines and the same materials.
They have the same consultants.
Yeah, and they do have the same consultants. Regardless of what the far left likes to say, they all use the same agencies. But Abdul, to me, he denied a lot of those tweets. He said they were taken out of context. Then he was caught on video talking about defunding the police. If you're going to hold these stances, I would have more respect for you if you just kept to them and doubled down and you said, yes, this is what I believe because I'm not a fake person and I'm authentic and you want to elect someone authentic. But he hasn't proved that.
That is an excellent point. I just want to get Michael on this. The woman who put out this video is Devin Murphy. She's, I think, the chair of the Maine Democrats. We're going to zoom in with the camera. So she's saying right now that Platner's team is holding, there she is, holding the Democratic Party hostages if they get to choose who would replace him. At some point, Platner has the upper hand, right?
Well, he needs to make the decision, right? And what they said was, we've repeatedly reiterated to Platner's team that they have no role. I'm reading from her video script, actually, in determining our next nominee for the U.S. Senate, nor in determining what this process looks like. So that's the line, and that's an escalation, right, from both the Platner side and from the Maine Democratic Party, because evidently negotiations broke down, and they're doing this. So
yeah, when you start negotiating, I don't know. We got as you point out, we got a whole week for this. Pop the popcorn. Michael, Yemisi, Meghan, thank you all very much. Great conversation. First word about this in War Notes, your chance for an inside look at the show every day. You will impress your friends with what you learn in War Notes. Warnotes.com to subscribe for free. We also have a daily video that comes out. I'll see you on social media at Leland Vittert. Speaking of socialists, they have shown us who they really are. In fact, they've shown the least fortunate among us who they really are. Will we listen?
Congratulations on completing yet another school year here in New York City.
We know that getting to this moment required hard work, creativity, and pushing yourself harder than you might have even thought possible.
The New York City school system demands a lot and prepares you for a rewarding life in return.
That would be great if it were true. The New York public schools are a disaster. A new report says in nearly 900 New York City public schools, less than half of the students can read or do math at grade level. Maybe they were too busy taking classes about queer identity and families with 3 dads. It would be funny if it weren't sad and true. And here is the cruelty. The poor kids who most need public education, they are the ones who are the most failed by the teachers' unions and sold out by the politicians. Robert Pandisio, senior fellow at the Thomas B. Fordham Institute and former inner city public school teacher, author of How the Other Half Learns, Equality, Excellence, and the Battle Over School Choice. Robert, good to see you as always. Should we be surprised by this report at all?
I wish. This has been a chronic problem, and the fact that it is a chronic problem doesn't excuse the fact that it persists. This report from Success Academy, the charter school network in New York, points out a problem that is, I wish it were new, Leland, but it's 900 schools out of about 2,000 in New York City, where less than half the kids, as you said, are doing reading and math at grade level. On the one hand, it's important to not let the fact that this is a long-term chronic problem dull our sensibilities about it. It's crisis. It's been a crisis. It's also not just a New York City problem, honestly.
No,
you could probably tell the same story about every major city in America.
Well, you can tell it about Chicago. There's dozens of schools there where not a single kid can read at grade level. There is a common thread, though, across major cities, which is that we are told the answer is to give the teachers' unions that got us to this point even more money. And to underscore that, here is soundbite number 4, the Chicago mayor telling us what the real problem is.
The city of Chicago and districts across the state are not fully funded by the state of Illinois. Again, it's one of those areas where I'm going to need more people to get active, to challenge not just city government, but the state government as well, to fully fund our schools.
Spoken like a lobbyist for the teachers union, which he was. The thing that bugs me about this is it's the poor kids who these socialists say that they're trying to help who are the ones who are hurt the most by this.
Yeah, I mean, the money question is really easily answerable and refutable. I was a New York City public school teacher, by the way, Leland. I taught in the South Bronx for several years, so I've seen this from both sides. Last time I looked, New York City is spending about $36,000 per child per year, which is double the national average. And the national average is more generous. In America, we fund schools at a much higher level than just about every other country on the planet. So whatever the problem is, it's definitely not the money.
Okay, if it is not the money, is it the teachers' unions or is it politicians who care more about using the teachers' unions and the turning schools into, I hate to say this, but indoctrination institutions rather than a place to teach kids learning, reading, writing, and arithmetic?
Yeah, you might not like my answer. You'll never invite me back. I'm not a teachers union basher, but neither am I a fan. I mean, it's a very easy thing to say, just get rid of the teachers union and all will be well. But there are states in this country that have very weak unions and they don't do any better. This is not to say that the unions are a good guy. I think that the issue may be closer to the other thing you suggested, just the mission creep. When I worked in a South Bronx school, in my darker moments, I used to say, look, I don't work in a school, I work in a restaurant. Our main role in this community is serving meals to hungry children. And look, that's important. You've got to solve hunger.
Yeah.
But the issue is the more problems that you ask schools to solve, hunger, mental health, eyeglass, dentistry, on and on, well, then the core mission of reading, math, education becomes secondary. I used to work with a teacher who said earnestly, look, reading and math are important, but I teach the whole child. If you think about that, what she was doing was giving herself permission to just not be a very good teacher. And
to focus on all this other stuff.
An earnest sentiment. I don't want to laugh at it, but it really is a problem. If you want schools to raise academic achievement,
Robert,
you have to make that their main job.
Well, and you have to grade and incentivize that and punish that as well. Robert, thank you very much. One thing for tomorrow when we come back. The Belgian soccer team, after last night's win over Team USA, trolling the president. I don't know, Katie, that kind of seems like something that Donald Trump would do.
Yeah, that's true. I'm sure he liked it. He probably is going to take credit for them getting a little more amped up, wanting to win. So I think he'll appreciate that flattery.
Game respects game, as do
Indeed,
I. Have a great show.
Good to see you, Leland. See you tomorrow.